Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cardistrytalk. This is episode 48, and today I am joined by Lucas Magic. You may know him for his rendering of a lot of popular brands like Fontaine and Anyone's. He's had a lot of really cool graphic design stuff going on, so super happy to have him on the show. Lucas, thanks for being on.
Yeah, of course, man. I'm excited.
So just opening up, I think a lot of what people know you for or what they like about the stuff you've done is your kind of rendering. So how did you kind of get into graphic design and renders and stuff of that nature?
Well, it was at a point where I had seen Nicholas Mullins. He's a French graphic designer and cardist, and he was the one who originally inspired me. And I contacted him to get renders done, but he wasn't available, so I wanted to figure out how to do it myself. And that's kind of how it all branched off. That's where I started.
So kind of had to figure it out for yourself to get what you wanted done.
Yeah, and then it just turned into doing things for brands, doing things for my friends, and it just kind of dwindled, and here we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
That's very cool. How did you get into cards as well? I'm curious about that.
So I was in middle school, actually, in 7th grade. I had met this kid named Gabe, and he was doing just magic in general, and I saw it, and I was like, that's really cool. So that's what got me into the entire card thing, and then I got into Cardistry because he was showing me Fontaine magic tutorials that he had bought way back when, and then he showed me their Cardistry videos, and since there, I've been into Cardistry as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's always fun to hear where people start. Obviously, I think most people, especially in the cardistry spectrum, start with magic most of the time. But
oh yeah, for sure.
It's always interesting to hear the stories.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask kind of when it comes to these designs, how do you kind of make your designs and kind of how do you decide what you want to do when it comes to the designs of these?
So it really depends on what brand or deck I'm trying to make a design for. If I'm copying a design, it's pretty much just trying to, with Fontaine, when they release new decks, trying to get it to look as close as possible to the real thing, as fast as possible usually, because I like to post either on the day of or just sometime during the week when they make their design. I try and get something out as fast as possible to give people a good look. But when it comes to like renders and such, I usually wait until there's a set amount. Like for Fontaine, I wait until I can make a rectangle to show like all of their decks. And for my recent Anyone post, I just kind of decided that I've never done an Anyone one, and I don't know how long it was going to take to make a rectangle or whatever, so I just started there and made it work. Yeah.
How long do these usually take to make? I'm sure it probably varies a good bit, but
it varies on like, okay, so I make the pictures with all of the decks, but usually when I make that, it's just adding the new deck because I save everything that I've already done, and I've been working on my Fontaines at least since like 2019 is when I started remaking them, and then they've released so many decks since that I just save it, and it makes it easier to just add the one after I'm done doing it. Usually it just takes longer to export because there's so many designs rather than it does for me to make the new design, so it depends on my computer, honestly.
And I think, like you said, you did the first one with Anyone. A lot of times most of the time, I would say you usually do stuff for Fontaine, making like renders and fan kind of ideas and stuff like that of potential future decks. What about Fontaine do you kind of gravitate towards?
Honestly, Fontaine is just the brand that I gravitate toward just because it's easier. I mean, it's easier to make the recolors. I can make those in minutes. There's also just, they've collaborated with more people, so it gives my mind more space to work on like other brand ideas. If I see a brand and I think it could look cool, I immediately jump to Fontaine because they're the brand that usually collaborates with the most out there companies, with even when it comes to like the MGM, like Pink Panther and Michael Myers stuff, you just see a brand and I think about Fontaine because they're the ones that have done it all.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy the amount of collaborations that Fontaine's been able to do.
Oh, for sure.
And right now they're getting ready for the Army of Darkness.
I'm excited.
Collab. It's going to be really cool.
I hope so.
But yeah, it's kind of wild how much Zach's been able to collab with big brands.
Yeah.
Even outside of Cardistry. So
yeah, I admire it. He works hard to get rights to stuff. Like when it comes to the Michael Meyer deck, it's like a really big deal to be able to use that stuff. So it probably took him a long time.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. And it's like, I have the Halloween deck right here
Yeah,
actually,
yeah, I have them
just
as well.
because it's Halloween.
Yeah,
But like, I'm sure he has to go through hoops when it comes to like picking what photos to use and what he can use and stuff like
oh for sure.
on these cards and stuff.
Yeah,
Um, but I think people really love these for obvious reasons.
yeah,
What's really cool about the collabs too is that like people that are fans of the other properties kind of get exposed to cardistry, especially
yeah,
with like a lot of the streetwear that I know that's kind of part of his focus is the
yeah.
streetwear.
I feel like a lot of people were introduced to cardistry like through skating because of the Rip and Dip collabs. I've known a lot of people who started like from skating and then got introduced like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really cool.
Yeah, the rip and dip stuff is wild. I mean, this is a nice segue into one of the questions I have is just about the rip and dip V3s because obviously you put an immense amount of work into that.
Yeah,
I don't want to say fake, but like
not real, you could say.
not official,
Yeah,
not official release almost. But obviously you're wearing the hoodie there and you have the
yeah.
deck of cards there.
I decided to wear the hoodie just because I knew we were going to be talking about it, and you know, it's easy to show the deck off since I actually have it. I can show it better than the pictures that I have on my social media as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, what kind of made you want to, hone in and specify on that deck there and creating a new version? And what was kind of the process? Because I know you said, at least in the post, it took you a very long time.
It took me a very long time to work on. I guess the reason that I chose Rip and Dip out of all the brands is specifically because this is what a lot of people thought the V2 would look like from the even the V1 after it was teased in wines. A lot of people looked at Rip and Dip and they're like, oh, they have this purple camo that they use on everything. People thought that it was going to be this, and after I came up with this and showed it to a lot of people, they're like, oh, that's what V1 was supposed to be. So it made me want to work on it more, just because I feel like it's a staple of Rip and Dip. So I decided to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you went all out. Obviously, wearing the hoodie. I think you made a sticker, correct?
I made stickers. I made a brick box. I wish I had some of that stuff with me, but I don't currently. But the hardest part was probably the brick box. I actually ended up trading a deck of errors from Dealer's Grip to get the V2 brick box, and then I kind of took it apart and remade the design. And then I worked with my friend to make not only the tuck boxes, which are, I mean, I folded it myself. It looks, I made sure to include the barcode, the information, everything that I could, even little NERM on the flap. But it took a while for me to get that, and then it was hard to dissect the design from there to get the brick box to do the actual opening correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what took the most amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, congratulations. It sounds like a really fun personal project you took on. I'm sure
it was
a lot
super
of people found interest in it.
Yeah.
Obviously, because of these, personal kind of projects that you've put on yourself, things that you find enjoyment of, you've been able to work with like actual brands and kind of create actual promotional material and such.
Yeah.
I know you kind of worked with Compass Playing Cards, which Cedric does, who I'm a good friend of. Maybe do a little bit. But what has it been like working with other people to kind of like advertise decks and stuff of that nature?
It's super fun. Usually a lot of people are really nice. People come to me and they're like, oh, I heard about you from blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of word of mouth mostly. I don't post a lot for other brands just because I'm usually not requested to. But it started I think the biggest one that I worked with was Cardilago, Franco's deck.
Mm-hmm.
It was really fun. I contacted him when he was just Magic Intel before he had even released anything, and I'm like, hey man, like it was originally just me talking to him, doing that for free, just to get myself out there, and then I've gotten a lot of requests since. It's usually really fun. A lot of people just, I mean, they have ideas for what they want, and then they send me, and then I get it done. It's pretty easy on my part, honestly. It's nice to communicate with everybody, and see decks early, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, get the kind of inside scoop.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Make you feel special.
Yeah,
for sure.
For sure.
So that's really cool. You've been able to work with other members of the community, obviously. through your promotions. Do you have like, I mean, this kind of has to go with my having no knowledge of rendering or anything like that, but do you kind of have like templates created for a lot of stuff like this?
I have a couple templates, but usually with the more recent work, I've been doing it by hand just because people want specific things or they want like a certain style. And I try not to just, slap the design on the same image. I want everybody's to be kind of special, just for them. So I have templates, but it's more assets rather than templates, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's more stuff I can slap together rather than just slapping the design on stuff I already have.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's super awesome. Obviously,
Yeah.
everybody wants their deck to feel special.
Yeah, of course.
So that's great that you're able to do that for everybody and
Yeah.
put that effort in.
I think
For people, what was that?
I think it really makes it feel better when you're paying for something and you get that more special out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels unique and like an event almost. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
For people like me or potentially people listening to the podcast right now, who have like no idea about, like I said, rendering or anything like that, what would be some good first steps to kind of get into that realm of like design and rendering? Do you have any tips for that?
I think that if you're trying to get into the design aspect, like just designing back designs and stuff, if you have absolutely no idea where to start, I would say, copying iconic decks is a great way. Not like copying, but remaking them. As that's something that I do a lot. I remake a lot of designs, and it keeps me fresh. I started back when I was starting and I had no idea what to do. I just started trying to remake designs like Fontaine and Virtuoso, the simplistic like just shapes, it takes a lot of time when you're first starting, but looking back, it's nothing compared to what I'm doing now. But that's where I started initially with design, just learning whatever program you pick and learning how to make anything. That's probably the best first step for designing. When it comes to 3D renders and such, Blender is what I use, but there's also Cinema 4D, which is like a paid program. There's a ton out there. But I think just learning your way around whatever program you plan on using is probably the best first steps.
Do you have any recommendations for like what programs to use? I know you mentioned Blender.
Blender is probably, it's really powerful for 3D rendering. A lot of people for design use Photoshop and, like Illustrator. But if you don't want to pay for any of that, you can use Inkscape, which is what I use. I've used it since 2019. There's a lot of tutorials online because it's open source and it's free, so a lot of people have access to it. That's what I would use if you don't feel like paying Adobe a bunch of money just to learn.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, it's rough. I have Adobe Illustrator. It's rough to pay $20 a month just for a program.
Especially when starting out, you don't want to take that risk.
Yeah,
if you don't like it,
sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Not sure if you're gonna get into it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your designs or just cardistry in general, where do you usually draw your inspiration from when creating things?
I can draw inspiration from anything, honestly. Like, I've been working on a design recently with a friend that he went into his dad's garage and he found a vintage ad from the 60s, and we've been taking inspiration from that. But I also draw inspiration from brands and people. Like, you can look at a certain deck and connect it to a certain person, and that can spark ideas sometimes. Also, with design, there's a lot of inspiration from cardistry videos. You see movement, and you think about what could look good in that movement, and that works for me pretty well.
Mm-hmm. How often do you kind of think about like card design, how we could improve card design, or if you have any kind of thoughts about how card design could be better implemented for cardistry or potentially Magic and stuff of that nature?
Yeah, this question was the one that I thought the most about, I believe. And in all honesty, I think that design in the community as a whole could be improved. Just, people don't want to be honest if a design is bad all the time, but sometimes you have to be. Just improving honesty in the community. Like, I know that you never want to talk down to your friends, and I don't like talking down to people in general, but just being honest if a design is bad. I've been told that designs that I've made were bad so many times, so I scrapped them and made something better. Um, but all in all, it's just, you know, it's communication is a really good way. Outsourcing, asking people how a design looks, what they think about it, what you think you could do better. It's really good for design.
Hmm. I think what you see too is like since we're such a small community, like you don't want to say like you said, you don't want to talk down and on
Yeah.
anyone or anything because like we're such a small community and like everybody
Yeah.
kind of knows each other a lot of times.
Yeah. You never
Or
want to target an individual. You always want to try
yeah,
and help.
so I can understand that for sure. I would say too, just adding on to like asking other people's for their thoughts. I would say asking like the correct people or the right people, I guess, in a sense, like
Yeah.
people that are actually going to give you actual feedback and not just say like, "Great job," you know.
Yeah.
Like I think it depends what you need. Sometimes people do need just that encouragement, but I know if I like send a video to somebody and then just say "good job," like I'm like that did nothing for me. Like
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
looking for the criticism. Um, so I mean, I guess it depends if you're looking for it or not, but
Yeah.
definitely finding the people whose opinions you value and respect or you align with, I think is very important when it comes to that type of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Like I see people posting their designs on like Reddit, per se, like on the Cardistry Reddit or the playing cards subreddit, and people never give like in-depth opinions. They're just like always good job, or they're like I don't like this. It's not very helpful.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, and with that too, I think like getting in person, talking about a design and stuff too, instead of just like you said online, it's very easy to just like say, "Oh, it's bad. Oh, it's good," and they have no
yeah,
like reasoning behind it or anything like that. There's no real value there. So
yeah,
having someone that you can dialogue with too, why is it bad? Why is it good? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it?
yeah. It's always good to have more in-depth conversations about things that you want to be serious about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So definitely interacting with the community and actually like getting to know people in the community
yeah, for sure.
um, is super important just in general for cardistry.
Yeah, and that ties into design too as well. It's not easy to talk about it, but sometimes you need to.
Hmm. When you go to make your designs, do you have other people in mind, or do you design stuff kind of for yourself, or what you think would be cool?
If I'm designing a deck for myself, which I'm designing like three currently, for myself
Hmm.
and for a brand that I plan on putting out soon, I'm designing it not only for myself, but for what I think will look good, and what people will like. There's certain trends always in cardistry. There's always been trends. Trends continue to update every year. But I make sure that I like it before I tweak it for what I think other people will like. So, usually for myself, before I even ask anybody.
Hmm. Because it's always interesting, and I love talking about this a lot more with creating moves and stuff like that. Because this is something I find really interesting is like why people create is finding like because there's some people that create just for themselves and then like
Yeah.
they're really concerned about what they think. Like I think Greg, I don't know if you know Greg,
Yeah, correct.
um, but Greg is one who he creates solely for himself.
Oh yeah,
Like
for sure.
if someone like says, "Oh, that move's good to go," if he feels like it's not good to go, then it's
He
not
won't
good to
even
go.
show it. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just for him. Yeah,
but you have other people who like base everything they do off of what the other people react to it. So
yeah. I
it's
feel
just
like
interesting.
that comes into a lot of like moment moves. I feel like those are never made like for individuals. I feel like it's made to impress everybody, and that's like some designs are made not to impress individuals, but to try and impress everybody. And sometimes it just doesn't work. But there's always going to be things that work and things that don't.
Hmm. And I know this wasn't like one of the questions I had given you beforehand, but it is something I kind of cover all the time on the podcast, and I didn't think to add it. But when it comes to actually like creating moves or making cardistry moves, I'm assuming you do that in your spare
Yeah,
time. I'm assuming.
yeah.
Do you have any process or any kind of thoughts on how you can make better moves or how you can go about being more creative?
Um, well, when it comes to moves, I don't try and stylize. Like I don't try and keep myself to one style. Um, a lot of people don't know from my Instagram, but I actually am like a very avid cardist. I have a lot of saved moves, a lot of material. I'm not just, someone that just designs. I
Hmm.
I like to think of myself as an intermediate like cardist that has some very good moves. Um, but I try not to confine myself to one style, you know. I've made packet cuts, I've made spinny moves, I've made fan moves. I think it's good to just branch out. I took like a period of 3 months just to learn a lot of different fans, and that helped improve my packet cuts because not only are you working with like a different conditioned deck, but you can take inspiration from the movement of fans and such to put into packet cuts, whether that makes sense or not. It
Mhm.
works, you know.
Yeah, and I can definitely say too with like doing the different motions for fans versus springs, packet cuts, stuff like that. You're training your fingers to do different motions and to
Yeah,
increase the kind of um what is it, range of motion,
yeah,
something. I think that's the word. I'm gonna go with that. But I
yeah,
think people know
yeah.
what I'm talking
Let's
about.
go with that.
But kind of the extent of how you can move your fingers and how far they can go.
Yeah, it's always
So
pushing it.
yeah, so I definitely think that's some great advice to kind of take into account is going for a wide variety of moves and kind of testing yourself and learning different things. It also just keeps it fresh and fun.
Yeah.
Um,
I always find it more entertaining to make moves after I've learned like other moves. It gives me a refresher. If I'm stuck on a move, I'll go learn something else, and then it can either inspire me or it'll just reset my mind to work on the move that I was already working on.
mhm. How long does it usually take you to make a move, or until you're kind of satisfied? Does it vary a lot for you?
It varies a lot because, since I outsource into so many different categories, it depends on the category sometimes. But I've had moves that I've made in days. I have moves that I'll make an opener and I literally won't come back to it for 6 months. Sometimes it's just doing one thing over and over again until I find something in a day. It depends. I have one move that took me 3 months of constant practice to get to where I like it, and I have other moves where it's taken me 2 days.
Mhm. And then one thing to kind of throw onto that as well is something I've kind of been interested in is do you prefer it when a move kind of comes together really quickly, like in a day or two, or do you kind of like the kind of grindy nature of like of things taking a long time and then you finally, piece it together after a long time? Like what is more satisfying to you?
I definitely absolutely love when it takes a long time. I love having an opener, and usually somebody will take an opener, and if they can't find something for it within like a month, they'll forget about it. But I always keep those in my back pocket, and then I'll find something that fits into it, and it just feels like it was worth the amount of time that it took to find something. I love doing an opener just over and over again until I can eventually find the middle part, and then I'll get up to the middle part, and it can take me months or days to find the closer as well. But I
Hmm.
always like the grind set is what I call it for making moves.
Hmm. This is something I haven't really like thought a lot about because you would think most people would be like, oh, like I would want my move to just flow out of me and like I'd have a move in a day or two. But
Yeah.
with most artists that I've talked to, it's obviously, or not, maybe not so obviously, but it tends to be the opposite. A lot, like you said, a lot of people kind of like the grind and like the kind of waiting and then just finding that perfect moment where what you know and what you're learning and what your inspiration kind of collides into something new, even though it takes longer.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
just
just
feel it's so much more satisfying.
yeah. It's definitely more satisfying, and I tend to be in the kind of range of like a person that makes a move in like 2 or 3 days, which I don't know if that is a good thing or a bad thing. I think some people probably think it's a bad thing, but
I
I
think it
tend to like
depends.
not try to overthink my moves. So like I always find it fascinating that most people take so long to make moves,
Yeah.
and I don't think I'm the greatest cardist by any mean, but it's just an interesting topic.
I agree. I think that it depends on the move, honestly. I have some moves that I've made in 2 or 3 days that are better than moves that have taken months, but it honestly, it boils down to the individual move, not trying to compare it to other moves that I've already made. Oh,
Um,
I had something that I wanted to add about my gravitation toward Fontaine as a brand. Um, Back in 2019, it was the week before Cardistrycon, right before Futures came out and everything. Zach posted on his story that he was looking for someone to do renders. And one of my friends who knew Zach had DM'd him, and I actually got hired to do renders of the guest sport playing cards. And it was nothing that
mhm.
was ever publicized or, like posted anywhere. It was just he needed to show them to guess. And I got hired for that, and it was right. It was before Futures, so I had that initial hype, and then Futures came out, and it sucked me in to the brand as a whole.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story, and it's really cool you got to work on that kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, I was not good at all back then. I don't even think I have access to the renders anymore. I think I've deleted them at this point because they were so bad compared to what I do now. But it's still nice to look back and see how much I've improved, and to see that even that I got hired back then, it would definitely make me more confident now.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear.
No.
So at the end of the show, I usually like to do what I call roll out the close-up pad, and that's just my fancy way of saying, is there anything that you would like to promote or any last nugget you would like to leave the audience with before we leave?
I have one thing that I want to promote if people like my designs for other brands and they want to see what I'm about to put out. I'm actually creating a brand with my friend Will, who you've had on the show, Not British, and it's called Imaginary Antics, and we're putting out our first design very soon. That's pretty much all I have to advertise for myself besides my own Instagram.
So obviously, I'll have links to all of Lucas's stuff in the description if you want to check him out, and definitely go check out the brand that he's making with Not British Will. Definitely will be some interesting content, I'm sure, from the both of you.
For sure. We have tons
real
of ideas.
quick, too, I want to say towards the end of this show, like, the amount of memes and crap posts that we got when I asked what to ask about Lucas was immense.
Yeah.
So that was really fun to look at. It wasn't super helpful for the interview, but it's definitely nice to see that you've interacted with a lot of people in the community and can joke around. So that's really cool.
I made the mistake of sending your story to my group chat, and I think that's where it all came from. I'm not gonna lie.
Probably is a good guess.
Yeah.
So Lucas, thanks for being on the show. I hope everybody enjoyed and hopefully learned a little bit about rendering and kind of Lucas's thoughts on Cardistry. I think it was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for watching. If you stay tuned, and we'll see you guys later.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.